Hey guys, B2 here, and one of the very first things you'll notice is that I have changed from the Soviet faction over to the US. If you pop on the characters, there's all the generals and whatnot for Soviet, and if you pop into the US, you'll notice that I don't have any. I did buy one lieutenant. He's a rank 12. He has one assault team, and I've only deployed 4 assault teams, you know, in this 2-war span, and he's almost leveled up without even playing them. Kind of cool. So you know, let's talk for 2 seconds, maybe a little bit longer, about the differences I've noticed between the Soviet faction and the U.S. faction. You know, there are a lot of guys that you pop into the games in the U.S. factions, and they're shooting Panzerfaust straight in the air. They're shooting their guns straight in the air. It seems like you get a lot more of the new players, right? Those guys that come right out of staged and jump into a map and are just, you know, they're not really a lot of help to your team. A lot of people call it new bowler, whatever. Whereas on the Soviet team, you do find more veteran players, even at the lower ranks. They're just better skilled, you know. The difference for me was that there's like a communication breakdown. So like if you're truly a US player, the first hurdle you have to get is the 5 to 8 hour time zone difference. So it's 5 p.m. your time, it's 10 p.m. their time, like 1 p.m. in the western side of Russia. Or 1 a.m. So it's kind of crazy. Like during my prime time, which would be the evenings, the Soviets are going to bed. You know, and unless it's the weekend, they're pretty hardcore and they stay up. But being hardcore like that, there's a lot more yelling at each other in chat. The team speak is a little tense, you know, and I was burning out on it, man. It was like try hard, and after a while, I just kind of, you know, after co-leading a clan and being into that, it was really tough. So I was like, you know, instead of quitting the game, I'm going to go to the U.S. for a couple of games. So I jumped over to the U.S. side, got into the war, went to the Allied TeamSpeak, and you can find that very simply by going into the forums on the main page, heroesandgenerals.com, hit continue to news site, and then go in the forums, and you can find the TeamSpeak addresses for all 3 factions. And all 3 factions have a great TeamSpeak that you could pop into and find a clan to play with, and I would highly, highly recommend it. When I started playing, I had a 0.6 KDA, and even 1.07 is not great. But this means that overall, any attack team that I play in is going to make money for that general who's moving these teams around. Now, to go from 0.6 to 1.07, that's a really, really huge difference just by joining a clan, and it's more coordinated. Even on the Soviet side, the German side, or the U.S. side, clan play is the way to go. So I jumped on the Allied TeamSpeak and started looking around and said, you know, let me just jump into a room with some people that I know, and I found the guys Ramen Ray, iPro Brother, Danko, Benson, Sasha Pizer, all those guys that a few of them I had come over to the Soviets and played around, and I enjoyed my time with them, so they let me play with them, and immediately I noticed that, you know, we had 10, 12 players in TeamSpeak, and it was really laid back, and it was just kind of like easy going. The guys were easy to get along with. We get in the first couple of matches, and we noticed that right away, like, everybody knows what positions to be in. When you're moving, you got guys flanking with you to take care of anybody outlying, getting to the next point. Like, it was really, really, really super cool, and I appreciated that. And so we probably have about a 95% win rate with these guys. You know, and of course winning's fun, right? So, but more than that, like, the TeamSpeak is fun, and we're laughing and we're having a good time, and that's where I really wanted to be at. I didn't want to hear complaining about weapons and, you know, nobody supporting you, and, you know, you're trying to take A2 and you got one guy sitting on O1 and you got a guy driving around the C line, and it's just crazy. Like, it's crazy the difference in the play styles. And I can attribute that just to a different personality of play styles. It's not wrong, it's not right. It's just that, you know, everybody's going to play the game their individual way. So you have to find like-minded players to play with. So get on the TeamSpeak. So part 2 to this, the first part I wanted to talk about the clans and the differences, and plug the TeamSpeaks for all 3. And what I'll do is in TeamSpeak, in the description of the video, I will put the Allied the German and the Soviet team speaks in there, so you guys can connect those and get into a clan. It'll drastically improve your play, and it will help you enjoy the game a lot more. And it doesn't matter what faction you join, just get in there and get a clan. Second part, we're going to talk about attack teams, and we're going to take a look at the queue. So even though this says day 9, this would in reality be more like day 3.5. Versus the old time scale. So before they were doing 2 game days for every real day. So every 12 hours was a 24-hour game time, meaning you would get 2 complete day-night cycles in a 24-hour real day, right? So now that that's changed, you are going to get 4.7 day and night cycles in one day. So this might say day 9 up here, but this is going to be like, in reality, what used to be, it's probably, let me think, 1, 2, this would be the 3rd day that the war's been going. I think it started about 7 hours from now, 3 days ago. So that's right, it started on like Tuesday night, I believe, was the new war. But you'll see how this is 9 days in the war thing. Almost 9.5. So that's the first thing. And there's a couple of reasons for that, and I really like the way Redo did this. If you had traditionally logged on every day at noon, you would be playing at the same time of day. And if that happened to be night, that meant you might have only had 2 hours to play every day, and it was noon to 2. You were playing every single battle in the nighttime. And God forbid you hit nighttime with fog, you could run around shooting nothing. You know, it would be a horrible way to play the game every day from noon to 2. You know, with this new cycle, if you logged on every day noon to 2, you would get a completely different time of day, probably every day of the week. You know, you get the morning, afternoon, twilight, and night, you know, and you would get to experience all that as a player. So Redo did a really cool change with that, and I appreciate that. So third part is we're going to talk about the war map a little bit, and we're going to look at kind of what's going on day 9, and maybe we'll chronicle this a little bit more through the week, and I can show some progression. So you'll notice that down here at the bottom we got Marseille, and the Germans pushing over top. If I was them, I'd want to push over top and come down, and then cut all these troops off. I just don't know that that's going to happen at this time of day. It's 2:30 p.m. and the Germans are going to go into prime time. I think they're 6 hours ahead, 5 hours ahead. So anyway, it's either 7:30 or 8:30 their time. They're rolling through prime time right now. And if I clicked on a battle, I could show you. Let's get down here a little bit more. They have no percents, and we're 23% underdogs right now. So let's take a look at the Soviet faction, and they should be okay at this time of day, probably 35 or so. Let's find one that's. Let's go in here. There we go. Yeah, see, 33%, 23%. It's actually pretty even and pretty fair all across the board. 30%, I don't really consider that a huge underdog. I've seen the Soviets in the evenings between 65 and 70. I've seen them as low as 105% underdogs. That's crazy, meaning that the leading faction had 2 times as many players online. Kind of hard for the Soviets to get going there. If you like fighting underdogs, they're your team for sure. So, here's the thing about attack teams, and you can look down here. Look at this is a mess, and I can tell you what's going on down here is we've got some battles going. Look, there's only 38 and 9. That's not going to be fun. So someone has to push some troops in there. If we look down, if you're going to put something into this battle at all, I would wait until the battle starts and then put in armor. The problem with this as it stands right now is that there's nothing really that's going to help you assault. Especially on an E and a D line, you got 2 bridges to come across here, a bridge and a water crossing. So in order to help support that, you're going to want a couple recons on the beaches, sniping across and sniping into the D4 top of the tower. If you could put in armor, light armor would be fantastic. Anything with HE, a tank destroyer, that way you can shell these areas and soften them up with the infantry on the shores to get your jeeps and trucks and APCs and whatever across. Plenty of APCs in the battle. The only thing about armor is that, you know, as you play your guy and he levels up, the first one you have is your tanker, and a lot of people swap to tanker, and so they no longer have an infantry to play, and the only battles that they can possibly play in are tank battles. So you get people, if you put in lights, that are brand new tankers that can't play an infantry and jump right into your battles. So in order to combat that, you just wait until the timer runs out, wait until the game fills, and then you send your light tanks down the line. That way, You get all the, whatever players are in the battle. If they get a bunch of vets, you can throw your tanks in, and they're using the top tier light tanks. They're using tanks that have HE. They're not the new guys that are just busting into battle. And I consider the same thing with planes too. If you want to fill a battle and make it go, put light tanks and planes in a battle. It's guaranteed to fill it up. So as you look through these, what they're trying to do is they're trying to cut off some troops here. 1,000 troops in this town. If they were able to pull this town behind it, which is Nancy, and win that, so you got a couple of the guys in here. If they can get up these lines, which they're going to have a hard time because A line is closed out, it would isolate this town. And then if they were to take that town, you would get 1,000 infantry, 7 recon, 33 jeeps, 31 bikes that would go into the queue, which is right here. And you can see on day 9, give it a second to load, we still have a really, really large U.S. queue. You can tell I played Soviets for a long time. 3,500 in the queue right now for assault teams and climbing. Actually, this morning it was about 3,560, 3,570, somewhere in there. So it's not too bad. But if you look at these, look at my lonely 2 assault teams down here. Look at that, halfway to bikes there, halfway to bikes. And you can see how the battles are starting to shape up. So I would imagine that tonight the U.S. would want to get rid of these, push these guys in down these lines, get these lines back into the choke points, and then kind of push this bulge right here back down. At the same time, the Germans are in a wonderful position up here. Like with these are normally choke points in here, and this little alley is, if you ever want some really, really tough fights, fight in this little alley right here. I can tell you that from experience in fighting the Germans. And then Rennie Brela, I don't know for you old school guys, where Rennie and Brela used to be this one-line assault right here. It was a choke town, Brela and Rennie. And you'd fight, there was only one way in, but now you can take a second one here and get 2 lines into this choke point, and there's a second area here to go into Tulsea. Before it was just the one, and you had to split back off. These towns weren't in there. Really kind of cool, and you could see at the start of wars, troops would rush down here to get to these choke points. So kind of cool, if you look in, and we'll go a couple more battles, and I'll show you what to put into these battles here. An American defense at Woblin, which is about to lose actually to a pretty decent German team, I would imagine, who's come down the A line and captured the church, and now are going for this this police station in here. So if you looked at it, if you had APCs, I would have put APCs in here. It gives us, on a defense, you can sneak an APC all around the church and into the woods along these lines here to continue to spawn characters out. We did have tank destroyers, although at this point in the battle, because they're in the town, you wouldn't want to spawn a tank destroyer, because just in the town they're not maneuverable. You're not going to get a good clear vision on the field. Actually, after you kind of lose A3 and they're taking A4 there, you want to get out of your tank and go into the city and fight and push them back out. If you get to push them back out and get back down to A3, then spawn a tank, get back in there and shell them away. And you also want to shell this shoreline here to B3 and watch. Like if you're an anti-tank guy and you've got mines, you could set them up on the bridge here or in town, and guys will always drive across and cry there. So just a couple of examples of what I would personally do if I had the units in here. Let's keep looking here. So you see here we're going to do an assault on Bad Neuheim, but we don't have enough infantry to make the game fun. So you have to have 180 infantry spawns as a minimum. That makes it fun. You could do 140 infantry and 20 recon, and that makes it fun because 20 recon would be 40 infantry, which would be 140, and 40 would be 180. You could do 90 paratroopers, which also count as 20 infantry. So 90 paratroopers would make 180 infantry and give you enough spawns in there. And there's different combinations. And so what I would say is try to mix it up a little bit. Try to have a little bit of everything to make it fun. And that way you don't lose. Because these guys right here are just going to get pushed out of this town. There's not even a timer. So it would be a 5-minute prep timer. Once it hits 0, it's another 5-minute timer before it auto-resolves. So you only have 10 minutes to get your troops down these lines. to get in there and make that fun, according to the battle director. So anyway, just wanted to hit you up with those 3 things on this video. Hope you've enjoyed it. If you have anything you'd like me to show, please leave it in the comments. I'm thinking about trying to do a top like 10 bike jumps or Jeep jumps or motorcycle jumps or something like that, or getting some shovel hits, those sort of things. So let me know what you want, and I'll try to get it filmed. Hope you guys are having a great day. Enjoy Heroes and Generals.